You know, countries threatening one another, it is not entirely uncommon in international politics, but how they do it is usually unique. You know, the United States, if it doesn't get its way, sometimes they're like, smells like there's oil under your capital. Or in the case of Russia, they're like, maybe we have to use nuke, who know? That's not the accent. But easily the most unique threat I've seen is that Botswana has threatened to send 20,000 African elephants to Germany. And according to Botswana's president, Mokgweetsi Masisi, the one who made this threat, this is not a joke. Right, so basically what had happened was that the German government has been floating the idea of putting stricter limits on the import of hunting trophies because they have concerns about poaching. But Masisi says that this would just impoverish ordinary Botswanans and limit their ability to deal with what he says is overpopulation of elephants in the country. And saying to German media, it is very easy to sit in Berlin and have an opinion about our affairs in Botswana, but we are paying the price for preserving these animals for the world. And as far as what the situation looks like on the ground, while elephants remain endangered globally, they're like everywhere in Botswana. But the country's roughly 130,000 elephants, including 6,000 calves born every year, living across an estimated 40% of the country's land. And that's in part because of the country's successful conservation efforts. With Dan Challender, a conservation scientist at Oxford University, saying to the BBC,
Botswana's ranked first in the world for conserving megafauna, including African elephants. So it's got a really successful conservation model, and that happens to include trophy hunting.
And with that, part of this is arguably because a lot of the revenue from trophy hunting goes to funding conservation efforts for vulnerable species. And to that point, Germans are actually among the largest importers of hunting trophies in Europe, with a lot of that money then reportedly being used to fund sustainable conservation in many African nations. And as I mentioned before, according to Masisi, the success of the conservation efforts has actually led to overpopulation, which has in turn threatened the lives and livelihoods of Botswanans. And that's actually a point that Challender agreed with.
But I think the president of Botswana is seeking to highlight the high cost of conserving megafauna species, including elephants. The people of Botswana incur those costs through loss of life in some cases, damage to crops and damage to property. And I think it's important that we consider the high cost that people pay to conserve and live alongside species such as elephants.
And, you know, notably, African countries have long accused Western groups and governments of pushing for conservation policies that limit their ability to deal with these large elephant populations. With Botswana's wildlife minister just last month threatening to send 10,000 elephants to London after the UK proposed a ban on the import of hunting trophies. And at that point, Challender also told the BBC that Germany, the UK, and most other Western countries manage their wildlife in much the same way as Botswana, allowing animals to be hunted when they start messing with people. And also saying the idea that proposed import bans would help protect threatened or endangered species is essentially unfounded. But of course, this is there are a whole lot of people who disagree. For one, of course, many animal rights activists simply argue that hunting is cruel and should be banned no matter what the numbers are. And on top of that, many conservation and animal rights groups argue that the alleged benefits of trophy hunting are lies spread by the hunting lobby. For example, while Botswana has a quota system for trophy hunting meant to ensure that the animals aren't overhunted, poaching remains a major problem. With, for example, the Telegraph reporting in February that a poaching surge had seen 60 elephants killed in just 3 months, with poachers specifically targeting so-called big tusker elephants, of which there are actually only a few dozen left in the world. And many conservationists also say that one of the big arguments for trophy hunting, that it brings money in for the country and the local communities, that's unfounded. With Kitty Block, CEO of the Humane Society of the US, saying in an interview with CBS last year,
well, it couldn't be further from the truth that killing these animals, trophy hunting these animals, brings in more money than ecotourism. It doesn't compare. A living elephant can be seen over and over again. It's been estimated over $1.6 million in wildlife ecotourism alone.
But with all that said, I got to pass the question off to you. What are your thoughts with this?